Moderator Lucy Brown, Associate Dean of Screen, London College of Communication. We have Claire Sharkey, founder at Sharkbit. Emma Smith, Head of Talent at Creative Assembly. And Rachel Gregg-Smythe, the producer at PlayStation.
Thank you. Okay. We're going to all sit underneath our images, I think. Yeah. Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here this morning on day 2 of this wonderful conference. So, thank you to the Nerd Pirates for that wonderful introduction. So, I'm Lucy Brown, Associate Dean here at LCC for the Screen School, where we offer MAs and BAs in games design, as well as virtual reality as a master's, and also introducing that as a BA. So, this is obviously my side of things is all about kind of the education, but I'm also aware of the very much different routes that people might take into games. And that's what we're going to talk about today with our esteemed panellists. So if we can, what I'll do is start off with asking them to introduce themselves and say a bit about who they are, what they do and how they got there. And I really want this to be a kind of discussion and a debate. So, you know, put your hand up at any time. Ask questions, so we don't have to wait until the end. There is a mic, I believe. Yes, there's a lady here with a mic. So anytime you have a question, please just feel free to jump in so that we can have a discussion, and any questions that you're desperate to find out, we can get covered. Okay, so if I can start off with yourself, Claire.
Oh, sorry. I'm going to do this as ASMR. Oh, no, I'm not. It's very loud. Hi, I'm Claire Sharkey. The photo above is representative of my just life. I'm a founder of Sharkbit, which is a consultancy that handles marketing, PR and brand and any sort of needs that studios have in filming games. I've previously been head of marketing and brand for various companies in esports and video games. And as we chat later on, we'll get to how I got into that, and it's not very conventional at all. Yeah, I have 2 BAFTA nominations that I like to shoehorn into any time I'm talking about myself. So yeah, which I've just done, really proud of myself. So I'm going to give this to somebody more humble, thank you.
You don't know I'm humble. No, hello, my name is Rachel and I am a producer at PlayStation in their Manchester studio. I'm also one of the 3 founders of a non-profit organisation called Girls Game Lab. And woo! We won a little award last night. Yes, and I am also one of the regional coordinators for Women in Games in the Northwest. So yeah, I'm based in Manchester and try to do a lot of work in sort of the north there. And that's me.
Thank you. I'm Emma Smith. I'm Head of Talent at Creative Assembly. My route into games has been a little bit of a weird and wonderful one, from playing games in my home when I was a kid in the middle of nowhere in Wales, and not only being able to see mountains and slag heaps, through to moving through my career and ended up being at Creative Assembly and being able to really make a difference, and they've given me the freedom to work with the Legacy Project, where I've been able to go into schools and help young girls and anybody in underrepresented areas to find their way into games, that be it from 4 to 5 years old, and trying to recognise how to break down some of those issues and work past their lack of confidence as teens, all the way through to people who are coming in and taking permanent roles at Creative Assembly. I don't have BAFTAs. I haven't won awards.
I don't have BAFTAs. I have nominations. Get that word out.
I'd like, to be fair, that's good as well. That's still amazing. Very round of applause. I won a singing competition in school when I was 12. That was all right. I can play the recorder and I finish an Iron Man. So, yeah, accolades all round.
Thank you very much, ladies. And can you just talk a bit more about what education you had? Did you follow? I don't believe any of you've sort of done a conventional kind of games degree. So what education did you do, and how did you get your first break into the games industry?
I will be passing this on. I went through the traditional route. My interest actually through GCSEs, A-levels, degree, I wanted to be Indiana Jones. So I was really interested in archaeology and also really interested in religion and the way that people interact with each other and the way that they think. And the way that we can all come together as a community. I was really fascinated by people's thought processes and how to bring some of that stuff together. I really love research and the academic side of it. And then I realised quite swiftly that it would mean me running around in fields of mud, not really doing much more than that. And it kind of put me off a bit. So I wanted to carry on just thinking about where that qualification would take me at the end of university, and whilst I was thinking about it, I ended up working in retail, selling health food supplements, because that makes a difference. And then my career slowly but surely ended up having a lot of similarities in many of the roles that I've had, from working for British Telecom, taking 999 calls, through to leading teams there, working for the National Health Service, and sort of moving into the human resources and personnel side of it, because it was the interest in helping people find a way of making it work, finding a way of bringing their life together, understanding what roles they could have. So it became less about me and more about them. And then I worked for Citizens Advice Bureau, where I ended up going down the route of talking to people, helping them get back into work or back into education. The opportunity to move from the charity sector, where we had no money, you had to bring your own tea bags to work, going to a AAA game studio in the south of England, where there were many different types of tea bag, to being able to do my best work in a place that I was like, oh my God, I'm in a game studio. This was like something that just wasn't a job when I was 12 years old playing Sonic the Hedgehog. It wasn't something that my careers advisors even had anything to know about, or it wasn't something that girls did. I'm somewhere now that I feel like I'm utterly amongst people that are just as weird as me. But you'll be able to take on the bits that I got out of my degree, the curiosity, being able to deal with people in crises, help them find their way, to being able to speak to young people and help them get to move into an industry that they really love. So it's been weird and wonderful. Everything from making pizzas, selling beers, doing a bit of marketing, through to this. So everything has been not a waste. It's all been coal on the fire. And that's kind of been where I've ended up so far.
Yeah, for me, just what you were saying, I didn't really do a traditional route into games, as in I didn't do the games design course at uni or anything like that. When I was in school, I was always interested in games, same as you, loved playing games, but didn't know anything about how they were made, how to get into it. Surely they were made. There's people, a long list of credits at the end of games. Who are all these people? Can I be one of them? But yeah, I had no idea how to do it. I tried to obviously ask my school's careers department, and they didn't have any idea. I also went to a girls' school, so they were kind of like, why? Why would you want to work in games? So yeah, basically when it came round to choosing what I had to do at uni, I was quite creative and quite technical, so I chose to do architecture, and I just stayed with it for 7 years basically, and qualified as an architect. And then pretty much as soon as I graduated, I decided I didn't want to be an architect. Much to my parents' dismay, you can imagine. So basically I just decided that I wanted to get some sort of job in the games industry. So I applied to Sony Liverpool as a tester there, and just started from the bottom really. Gained a lot of experience over a few years at Sony Liverpool, and then basically made the progression by moving to another place into production. So I started as an assistant producer there, and again worked my way up, gained a lot more experience into a producer role, and yeah, that's kind of what I did really.
You were a producer at PlayStation now.
I am now, yes. So as I say, I started as a tester at Sony Liverpool, and then I left to join a production role at a place called Britton Publishing. And then I worked at a few other places, Roll7 Games. I worked at a place called Cubic Motion, who does a lot of facial animation for games. And yeah, I just basically spent a long time building up experience. And I recently joined Sony Manchester as a producer in their studio there. So I've been there about 5-6 months now, maybe. And yeah, it's going really well.
So, I mean, a lot of the creative industries are sort of freelance, aren't they, rather than full-time jobs? Have you had experience of freelancing, or have you been sort of lucky to get a full-time job, or what's it been?
So I have done a little bit of freelance work. For me personally, I prefer working in a permanent position, just because I find the whole having to go out there and finding contracts and things quite stressful, and I feel like I'm juggling a lot of plates already that I don't need the additional stress of wondering when my next contract is going to come in. But I know some people do really like thrive on that, and they love being in control of their own sort of destiny and setting their own hours and things like that, and that can work really well for people. So I did a short amount of time doing some freelance work, but for me, I prefer being in a project, in sort of a long-term project, and sort of helping shape how that project's gonna be going over the coming years, and that's what I like to be involved in, really.
I want to ask, after 7 years
Yeah.
of studying architecture, does that actually come in useful in terms of what you do?
Yeah, definitely. So as an architect, you're kind of like a jack of all trades. You kind of need to know a little bit / a medium about a lot of different areas. So you need to know about the design, you need to know about construction, you need to know about like a lot of legal and business stuff, and there's a lot of communication and teamwork in there, lots of dealing with different departments. So a lot of that sort of corresponds with the role of a producer, in the way that there's team management, project management, having to look after various different departments, being comfortable with talking to like external partners, shareholders, and things like that. So there's definitely a lot of overlap there, which is a lot of the reason why I really enjoyed the architecture side and doing the degree. But I wanted to use those skills that I really enjoy in an area that I'm super passionate about, which was games for me, not particularly building a hospital or something. But I do like theme hospitals, so I don't so yeah.
My history is a bit of a mess that I tried to marry Kondo into like a career. And I didn't realize that we haven't actually talked about our individual histories, so I didn't realize that we have some things in common. So I grew up in Ireland, and then I snuck in here 10 years ago. So I also trained to be an architect. I wanted to build houses, or I wanted to be a detective, and then I was trying to figure out how to fuse both of them. So build houses, let murders happen, and then solve them, which I think would be a really good video game somebody should make. So yeah, I got a degree in engineering, and then I came over here to do architecture, and then life happened and there was a crash and everything, and then my connection to you is more on the depressing side, where I was on the dole, and the dole is just not a fun time at all. It's not great, depending on your situation, etc. So I had 2 degrees. I was trying very hard to get any sort of job. If you're on the dole, they make you do things like courses things in that have no relevance to your life. I'm an SIA trained bodyguard and bouncer. I was put on a course to become a security guard with a bunch of ex-convicts. It was terrible, but like if you've got cash under the counter, I'll like bounce your event. Just call me. So yeah, I was trying to get jobs, and I was applying, and then I got a marketing job. So I got a marketing coordinator job for e-gaming, which is the less sleazy name for gambling. And I went in there and I thought I interviewed terribly. I did that thing that I think, if we're all very honest with ourselves, we all do, where we say we're proficient in Excel. I did all that. They gave me tests. I didn't know what was going on, and then I left, and I'm like, well, I didn't get this job. And then I got a call, and they told me, you're good with people, and I was like, and that's what we need, and everything else you can learn. So basically, I had no experience in marketing. That was my first job, and I learnt everything on the go. I think there's so many jobs you can do, and you can turn those skills into transferable skills that can work in another industry, like the video game industry. There's things that you have that aren't necessarily, practical, like Excel skills, that you can learn. There's so many things that you can learn, and especially in marketing. Marketing is a lot of hard work. PR is a lot of hard work, but a lot of it you can learn, and a lot of it is just waffling sometimes. I get away with waffling so often. But so I was told I was good with people, and I tried to use that. That helped me build my confidence as a person and in terms of my career. So then I climbed the ladder in that. I got a little bit higher and higher, but in between that, I'd loved video games. I'd always played video games. I could only ever play demos. We didn't have a PC that could play like full games, so it was just like shareware demos. But I know knowledge of the industry, really. It's a different time now with social media and Reddit and these sort of things. Ireland didn't have many conventions. I try not to take it personally that the convention started as well as gay marriage becoming legal when I left the country. I'm pretty sure that was just bad timing on my part. So in between these things, I was doing little freelance jobs. I was writing reviews for games. I was starting to realize that you can actually get jobs in games, but it was very hard. I mean, I didn't have a background. And then eventually, when I was working in the gambling industry, they realized that betting on esport was a massive $1 million thing. Nobody in the company knew what esport was. Somebody was like, is it fantasy football? And yeah, so I was obviously into video games, and they did that classic thing where they're like, Claire, we want you to take over the marketing for esport. And I was like, oh, a raise. And they were like, no, just do it, Claire. And I was like, okay, I got to earn that bread somehow. So I did that, and then I was like, listen, I want to be full-time in jobs. I want to be full-time in games, because the more I'm learning, the more I'm into games, the business side, the more I want to do it. And then I got a job as a marketing manager for like a company that's a bit like Twitch. And the first week of being a marketing manager, again, Excel was still pretty low on my skill level. I just want to be honest. It has improved. They made me head of marketing, brand sponsorship and events in a week. I was the only woman on a 12-man team, so that was all very intense, and that was more stuff I had to learn. And if I can learn this, I mean, anybody can. So that's it. My career just kept going. I was going to events. I was getting out there. I wanted to give back. When you've been on the dole for a while, you feel like a sponge. When you finally get jobs, it's lovely to be able to look after yourself, but to help people. And when you see the side of the industry, the people that just, buy the games, don't see. You see there's areas that you can help, so I wanted to do that. So I started running my own little events to help people that, found events stressful, and there was social anxiety about going, because it's quite daunting to go to massive events where, you want to talk to people, and, you think everyone there knows each other. You think, oh, there's veterans of the industry. So I wanted to give back. So I was doing that in between as well. After a few jobs, I wanted to be able to help people a bit more, but also help myself. So I started my own consultancy. So basically I started Sharkbit. Sharkbit is a fusion of my name and 8-bit, because I'm not that creative. And basically, yeah, so I would do freelance stuff. Like you, I prefer full-time work. I enjoy both, actually. I like being able to help studios within their means and have a bit of control of my own destiny, but I also like the security of full-time work. So I did this in between, and depending where I worked, I was able to do it on the side, and that's just helping indie studios with anything they need from marketing and PR and brand. I've done a lot of mentorship as well. I mentee indie studios, I mentee individuals. That's super great. It is super rewarding, which sounds really cheesy, but it's a lovely thing to be able to do. And that's like the gist of how I got here, and I think I've been talking for 2 hours. I'm so sorry.
No, I mean, that's fantastic, and it just shows the variety of different routes in. I just wanted to pause just in case anyone's got any questions. Anyone got any questions at the moment? Yeah? I'll just wait for the mic to come over.
You've all come through sort of non-traditional, or I suppose maybe traditional, routes into games, because games courses are relatively new still. I wanted to ask the panel if you place a lot of value on games courses as they exist now, and perhaps what aspects of those courses or a games education do you think are currently being done well or could be done better?
I'll pass it along because I think you might have better insight, but I don't think there's any games courses that really focus on the marketing and PR side, or how to help people who are on the dev side know how to juggle with that. Mainly when I meet people who they've done design courses, they've done all that, the thing they're lacking is marketing and PR understanding, but they still do a great job. But the point is that they want to make the game. But I don't know if courses do this, but courses should throw something in there with how you actually can sell your game if you can't afford external help, just basics about social media, etc. So I don't know if there's any courses that actually do that, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that I can agree with a lot of points that Claire's raising with the courses. Something that I have noticed more so, particularly with the business courses and the MAs, is the PR and marketing side of it when they are speaking to students. Students that are expressing an interest in the games industry that they don't necessarily have the knowledge or experience to be able to coach the students at that point, and that's where they'll reach out to places like Creative Assembly and other studios, other big publishers, and ask for advice for that, which we're absolutely happy to give and to be able to support those students where they want it. So I think it's less about the content, it's about connections with industry that's important. There are some amazing games courses that are available. So Sharon at Newer, they're great, and they're students that are really hungry for that knowledge and information and their experience, and so are the course leaders as well. So as an industry, I think that we need to start having that blended approach and really working together as a combined unit rather than it being very singular. And I appreciate that can be really difficult perhaps for smaller studios to be able to do, but if they reach out and speak to organisations such as Women in Games on how to bridge those network connections, then those courses and the students are only going to thrive for the fact that they've been there and going through the academic route. It works for some people, it doesn't work for everybody, but what it will give you is the personal tenacity to know that you've gone through something and you've come out the other side of it with a qualification and you've worked hard to get there. Going through that process will help you in life, knowing that everything isn't going to be easy. Yes, you are going to have to work hard. Sometimes you might fail and you have to pick yourself back up again and go for it again. So there's huge amounts of value going through the academic route as well. That's my perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I would just completely echo that. Some of the experiences I've had with students have been really valuable, especially those students who are doing courses where they have placements or something. They have an integrated time in their course where they go and spend some time in a studio. And we found especially those, I found in my personal experience that the students doing that are become completely invaluable to us because they're so obviously so eager and keen to learn. They're bringing all the fresh ideas to us, but at the same time, they're being taught in a practical sense. They're learning on the job. They're learning how things work, how processes happen, how the game is made, and how things are structured. But it is a two-way street. It's all very well saying to universities, sort out placements, but but obviously there needs to be work from game studios themselves to encourage that and to try and make that a sort of two-way dialogue. So I think if we can encourage more industry experience during the study time or immediately after, I think that would be a lot more valuable. And that's my thoughts on it. Yes, go.
Just to add to that as well, that some of those experiences that are super valuable for students don't necessarily need to be in studio. So perhaps the studio can provide some course content or give a project where some people from within the studio can mentor those students to go through that project or to review the work that they've completed at the end of it. It's just sort of breaking down the mystery of the game studio and the course and recognising that it's a part of it. So we like to think of students as developers in waiting, that they're trainees whilst they're in university, rather than there's a break between finishing education and then going into the world of work. If we can try and blend it together, sort of as Rich was saying, is that then it'll make the students feel that they're already a part of it and our experience then is really valuable. And we actually get a lot out of it as well, particularly for people who have been ambassadors or mentors from studios. We find those people as developers or people who support the games industry become more passionate themselves, and it kind of reignites their reasons why they're making games, why they're a part of that creative process, why they love what they do, because they get spark off of meeting those students and they can start riffing off of each other. So there's a double benefit to being able to do that.
Right, thank you. A question?
What crossovers do you think there are between TV and film and gaming? Because you kind of briefly said about courses, but obviously a lot of more games are looking more filmic and everything like that. So what do you think? Because I think there's a huge ability for people who work in the TV and film industry to, whether they be a producer or whatever, can also complement the gaming industry. And I necessarily don't think that many universities are doing as much as they possibly can to kind of mould that thing together. Do you know what I mean? So how can they complement one another? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I am seeing more and more people applying for roles in game studios that have had film experience to start off with, for many different reasons, including one that we've mentioned briefly already, is about permanent work, where they come to a point in their life where they want that level of permanency and security in their work life and their career, and feeling that they can progress with someone as a mentor by their side for a longer period of time, perhaps 6 months to a year. And the crossover skills in terms of animation and VFX are absolutely there. We're sharing a lot of the same tools and software and experience and applications of. And we know, we can see that games are evolving from the experiences that I fondly remember as a child to being a fully immersive experience. If to look at Hellblade and Senua's Sacrifice, that is a real immersive experience. And it's becoming more of a longer term entertainment part for people to take into their lives when they want to relax or they want to have that experience. And I say, but I am still recognising that perhaps on some courses that perhaps the course leaders have got more of a lean-in towards film, or they know that the majority of their students will leave the course and then go on to being employed, which is exactly what you want for your students and what you want as an academic facility as well. However, they're probably doing that because they don't know enough about games to be able to talk about those careers. So for those course leaders to then again, reach out to us as an industry, we can provide that information, and even going in and speak to the students as well. So it is about blending that information back and forth. But yeah, there is a huge amount of crossover, definitely for me, because I said I am seeing those people having a drive towards coming into games. And yeah, and actually seeing a lot more women as well, and a lot more diversity, which is what we need more of.
Yeah, I would just completely agree. Yeah, it's really interesting how blended it is sort of getting, and how the lines are starting to really blur between film, TV, and games. I don't know if anyone played Bandersnatch on Netflix that came out. So that was a really interesting experience. Where it was a Netflix sort of program, but it was like a choose your own adventure sort of type, and you could sort of choose the outcome of what happened at the end. And there's a lot of games that are kind of using the traditional media of film or of capturing performance, but in a more interactive way. So obviously we have Bandersnatch, and then I think Netflix are doing some more, I think they did a Minecraft story mode as well. So a lot of interactive experiences that big sort of TV or streaming services are now thinking about how can we make this more interactive with our audience. A couple of games came out recently that are very similar in the style of sort of TV and video. There was a game that came out on PlayStation recently called Erica, which is like an interactive short film experience. Again, where you can sort of choose and shape the character and how she sort of evolves. Another game came out recently called Telling Lies by Sam Barlow, which is again it's interacting with videos and searching. So really the lines are really, really starting to blur a lot now. People are starting, or at least a bigger audience is starting to realize like that games doesn't necessarily mean sitting in front of a PC and booting up Steam. A game can just be an experience that you interact with, or you share with your family or your friends or your partner, something that you can experience and feel involved in, and just have a little bit of a different experience with them. So
The Walking Dead,
yeah.
So Walking Dead, when we came to the end of that, and I'm not going to put any massive spoilers out, but I was like properly weeping, and I can't believe this is over. I'm so bereft. So it came through, it's like, are you okay? No. I need a drink. They said, but these aren't real people. You don't understand. Clementine is a real person to me. So that sort of emotional connection that you would get from watching a film and and following that story, to now we're seeing much more of that with games. And it's interesting for people to feel that they can be a part of an experience that lasts more than 90 minutes. That they can keep on dipping in and out of it and making it something really special.
No, absolutely. No, it's a good point. So yeah, all I wanted to say with that is there's a lot of roles that traditionally you might understand in TV and film that are more and more can be applied to games now, especially as we sort of evolve into these more interactive experiences that sort of blur those lines.
The only thing I'll add is, from a educational side, I mean, glorified builder working in games, so obviously anybody that studies film or anything at all related to that, of course it's transferable, of course it's interconnected, there should be more melding of it. From a business and marketing point of view, as we've already said, there's so much overlap between games and film and TV and everything. Like, there's a game that I worked on that is being picked up possibly by Netflix right now. Those discussions are happening, so games can be turned into things. Games are turned into TV shows, games are turned into other sort of experiences, board games, there's so many things you can do with it. Games are turned into films. That hasn't worked at all, but apart from like Detective Pikachu's not too bad, it's all right. It's pretty good. So it's all sort of weaved in together. So from a business side, if you're that also opens up more routes as well for people. So you could just be, listen, my focus is I want to do marketing and PR in video games and indie games, but it's good to keep your horizons open, because as I say, one of the games that I worked on was an indie game, and it was looking to be, so there's so many things. There's so many things happening, and then you look at esports, which is a whole different thing. But I mean, esports is essentially competitive video gaming that has now got its teams. It is a $1 billion making industry, and now it features in films. It gets sponsored by films. Films nobody's seen, but it's still on big billboards. You've got Asda, and you've got little chains. You've got Coca-Cola. You've got Audi. All these people sponsoring it. There's money there, and there's so many interloping elements to games in general. So yeah, it's a big mess, a good mess. Yeah. So.
Great, thank you. Is there a
Just following on from sort of, we were talking about education and roots in, have any of you seen successful sort of utilisation of the apprenticeship levy and apprentices being used within studios?
The apprenticeship levy, as it stood in terms of working with the development side of the studio, we really struggled to make it work, but I would not let it go. So, you know, something that perhaps we haven't talked a huge amount of is that there are lots of other areas within games that that the apprenticeship levy could have worked for us. So I turned my sights to our IT department who support the studio as a whole. You know, without the tech, they couldn't actually make the game. So our IT department are really important to us. And we wanted to give someone an opportunity to join our team and try and work out which area they wanted to go into. So yeah, we've done that with one of our IT apprentices. He's just about to finish. But unfortunately for us to really make it work, we would have needed to take 20 apprentices on every year on year, into the studio, and unfortunately that model wouldn't necessarily fit for us, but we found a way of making it work. And through going through that process, we're trying to replicate that success in some of the other areas. So yes and no, but yes. Yay!
Is there any reason why maybe it hasn't worked in the dev side of things? Because I know there are lots of developers in there for like animation.
What we found was difficult to make it work was the standard that the students would have been coming in and the level of work that would be required. There was a bit of a mismatch there. So we were unable to try and make it work in with our project lines as they were flowing at that point in time, but it doesn't mean it'll always be that way. Like I said, I don't like letting things go. I like to try and see where I can make them work for the studio and for the developers and for the students as well. I would just hate for them to come in and feel like they're not getting the experience that they wanted, and then would have a negative time and not get out of the course and the time at the studio that they truly deserve. So we find other ways to support where we can, but yeah, it just couldn't make it quite work. However, what I am seeing is students that are starting to go into university courses that are much higher standard than we've seen before. So the tide is turning, things are changing.
was there another question there?
Thanks. So I know that Rachel, you were saying you worked in both Liverpool and Manchester. I guess this is a general question, but have you noticed in any of your times in the games industry or like applying, because I know a lot of you sound not London-based. Would you say the industry is kind of moving towards London in the UK, or are you seeing like more of a shift out, especially up into Manchester and up into into other areas of the UK as well?
Yeah, it's tricky. I would say that there is definitely a more collective and conscious effort to have more games industry stuff outside of London. People are becoming more aware that it is very London-centric, and here we are today. And they're more actively trying to do things in the north or in Ireland, Scotland as well, and trying to sort of encourage more creative hubs outside of London. It is tricky though, because a lot of stuff still is London-based. There's a lot of opportunity here, there's a lot of studios here, so it makes sense. It's a hub internationally as well. It's easy to get to from other countries. Recently EGX obviously used to be based in Birmingham. Before that it was London, but then it moved to Birmingham. And that was really good for everyone else not in London, because it was literally like right in the centre of the UK. So it was a lot more accessible for studios throughout the UK. But obviously they've moved it back to London this year, which is a little bit frustrating for those of us not in London. But I think it makes sense for them in a business sense, and I think they're pairing it with Comic-Con and things like that. So we're trying. We are trying. We're trying to encourage more meetups and hubs outside of London, trying to encourage more networking opportunities, doing more activities and events. So we are aware of it. And yeah, for me personally, it's something I feel really strongly about, because I'm from Manchester, and I grew up there, and I found the opportunities at the time when I was looking to get in the industry a little bit limited. So that's why I started working in Liverpool, because at the time there were more opportunities in Liverpool, because Sony Liverpool was based there, and there's a lot of studios that have sprung up outside of Liverpool and the Sony hub around there. So at the time there were a few more places to go in Liverpool, which the commute was a nightmare. It was so bad. But Manchester has had a really, really good resurgence of studios recently. There's some really cool indie studios that are based in Manchester now. There's a lot more active community and networking that happens in Manchester. There's indie drinks that's happened every month. There's a large game jam that's held every year called Jamchester. And a lot of people come and do that as well. And obviously, Sony Manchester have opened up there now as well, which is great. So yeah, it is improving. It is something that I'm trying to work for as well, to get more stuff in the north, not just in the north, but also Scotland. Edinburgh has had a lot of new studios start up there recently. I don't know much about Ireland. I don't know if you know anything what's happening there.
In the past 10 years or so, Ireland has definitely improved. I mean, there's big studios there. There's EA, there's Blizzard, there's BioWare. They have studios there, and it's it's not just because of the tax evasion. But the indie scene has definitely improved a lot as well. So I'm from the Republic, but I know that Northern Ireland has definitely had a massive increase in studios, and they do a lot of things for networking, etc. London is the hub. London is the capital. Everything is centered here, but in the past 5 years or so, as you said, other places have just expanded more and more, and it's not just little studios, it's little studios that have grown within there. It's people putting investments in there, and it should happen. And to facilitate that as well, I think from a job perspective, working from home and remote job is so important, because people have lives, people have dependencies, people can't just uproot that easily. Brighton is littered with great gaming studios. Manchester has Fabric. I happen to work with their rebrand recently, and from chatting to them, they're doing a lot of things to outreach to people and bring them in. Scotland, as you say, that there's just more and more stuff happening, and more events are happening everywhere on small and on bigger scales. But London is still the hub. That's how it is. I mean, for me, living in London, EGX, whatever's here is handy for me to get to. It was fine going to Birmingham. It was fine. Birmingham was a good location for people to get to. London is a great hub, and you've got the tube and everything, but it's pretty shit for people with accessibility issues, such as people that need wheelchairs or anything like that. So I think that's something that when we're doing large scale events, I'm sure it's in the minds of people, but I wish people would think about the actual area that venues are in, because London is a nightmare to get around when you're able-bodied, let alone when you have things like that. I mean, the tube is this is a whole different conversation. I'm just pissed off at how the tube has terrible access for people with disabilities, etc. But yeah, London is the hub. Ireland is growing. I'm from like a small little village where everyone speaks Irish, and most of them are either dead or on the way out. And about an hour from that village, there is a gaming indie studio that I just came across, and to me that's amazing, because there was nothing like that when I was growing up. I didn't have anyone to play video games with. You know, my outreach to games was like picking up Games Master, rest in peace, and stuff like that. So yeah, London is a hub. It's going to always be the hub, but other places are growing, and there should be thoughts from the business side and from the education side and from the event side of how to make things more accessible, because, you know, this country has trains, so, you know, make use of it. So, yeah.
Anyone else with a question? Yeah, there's the back, I saw you.
Hello. So I career shifted from games journalism to game development studio work in my late 20s, and I feel like a lot of women came into the industry via non-traditional routes and sort of took a long way around, and I think that's a great thing for a studio, but I have noticed that those routes are often devalued by younger employees, like male employees especially. Is that something that any of you have experienced, and how did you deal with it?
Well, first of all, this is an industry where really age really should have no relevance at all. I'm 31, and like I say, it took me a while to get rooted, and it would be my late 20s where I could say I had a career and it was stable. So yeah, this isn't helping your answer at all. God, I don't know. I mean, I've worked in offices where I am the only woman in the office, and I would like to think that I was hired because of my skill and my charm. But I don't know if it was just to tick a box or whatever. I think things have definitely improved. As Marie said earlier, there is a great business value to having more diversity in your team. It's more insight. It's obviously good PR, etc. For me personally, I haven't encountered that yet. I've encountered where I've been in the workplace and been overridden or overstepped by people who happen to be males. When you're the only woman, it stands out. But in terms of getting the job, I don't know. It's very hard to tell from my point of view. So yeah, that was useless. That was absolutely useless. Son almighty. Words.
Okay, so answer to your question is yes, I have had experiences where perhaps my age has been against me, not necessarily in games, but in another sector where I was brought in to lead a team. And the team that I was leading, where the next youngest person to me was 22 years older. I was very popular, not. The team that I was brought in to lead had not had a manager for 15 years, so all of a sudden they had someone sort of trying to oversee what they were doing, and that was difficult. There have been many times where perhaps I've thought they've said, oh, it's an issue because they're younger than I am, or they haven't gone through the same route as I have, or for whatever reason. But I think as I've gone through now to my 41 years of existence on this planet, it's actually their problem. It's not mine. It's something that they need to work through, and it's something they need to own. So that confidence that you have in you and your skills and what you bring to it, you hang on to it. I would not give somebody else the satisfaction of eroding the path and the successes that I've got to where I am now. Absolutely their problem. And what would be really great to see more of is where your friends, colleagues and peers, if they recognise some of those poor behaviours, that they go, hang on a minute, you know, that's not cool. Don't say things like that. So it's about hanging on to you and your confidence in who you are and what you bring, but also having allies to your left and your right, knowing that they're there supporting you as well.
Another question.
You mentioned how developers could provide more course content for universities. I just wondering if you have any examples of like what kind of form that would take. Would it be like giving out talks or papers, or what kind of things would be useful for developers to give out to universities?
All of the stuff, all of the everything. It could be anything from sitting down with a course leader and asking them if there's a particular module that you can provide some guidance on the kind of work they would expect the students to put out and what standard they would look at, through to sitting down with a course leader way in advance of the course going out and looking at the learning outcomes towards the end of the course. It might be remote mentorship for a set period of time, going in, providing talks, masterclasses, something that we've tried to do at Creative Assembly, where we recognise that, you know, we can't be everywhere all the time, so that we get asked questions, similar questions a lot, and that's why we created the Creative Chronicles series and put it up on our website. So it's easy, bite-sized chunks of information to find out about art within games, or production within games, or even artificial intelligence. We've broken it down in lots of different areas. We point education providers to those so that they can pass that information on to their students with links on to other areas and other resources. So it doesn't necessarily mean you need to go in with both feet and be personally present, but just providing information and content and pathway finding to areas of really great information is a start. So yeah, everybody can do a little bit of something. You just need to find the best way that works between the course and what you're able to offer as a studio or as an individual.
Yeah, so my little brother has just moved over to Start University, and what they have is a scheme where they get previous alumni who volunteer as mentors, and then for first years they have them talk to them about their particular course or something. I think that would be a great thing for universities to do, especially with people that are already in the dev studio, but even the graduates. I mean, there's everybody at every step getting into a career has so much insight and so much value, so that would be great. And even just basically making a press kit and then sort of explaining the elements of a press kit and then supplying that to universities would be great, because that's a mix of art, that's a mix of the dev side, the marketing side, etc. Something as simple as that there, with little annotations and notes, would help people massively, I think. Yeah.
Thank you. Oh, actually, sorry, I know that lady's had a hand up before. Go there and then we'll come to you.
So yeah, so you talked about experience and education and the importance of that, but I think relationships and networking with others are also very important. What's your experience in that? How important was that for you?
For me, it's vital. For me, it's vital from a job point of view, as in to execute the job, and it's also vital for, you know, getting more work, etc. Networking is super important, and depending who you are, it can also be super daunting. One of the questions I get asked often is, you know, should I go to every event? What event should I go to? I mean, in an ideal world, I used to say in an ideal world you would go to every event, but no, in an ideal world you wouldn't go to every event. I think you do need to get out there a bit more. It can be daunting, but like I say, there's so many events now where people are being a lot more conscious about the fact that it is difficult to get in and mingle and network and do all that there. So there's definitely like a host of events that you can go to build up your confidence, and then, you know, there's different scales. It's good to get out there. If you're not somebody that finds going to events is something you want to do or is fruitful, everyone now has a social media presence. Everybody has portfolios. There's ways of interacting like that. There's forums, I'm assuming, you know, hopefully at universities there's groups and everything. And then these sort of events, this is a form of networking as well. If there's anybody here that's, you know, on a course, etc., you're chatting, you can chat to people afterwards and before. Networking is very important. online you can stand out because of what you say or what you produce, etc. And then in person you stand out a bit more because you know you've had an interaction with somebody. It adds a bit of memorability because you know that they remember a personality assigned with it. So networking is super important, but you can do it from the comfort of your own home, online, etc. And one thing I think that's very important for everyone is when you're networking, whether you're looking for a job or you're doing it for business purposes, you are representing your own brand. You are a brand. So you go out there and you be yourself. You know, don't hide who you are, etc. Really push yourself forward, but also just be mindful as well that you know you are essentially a business entity yourself. You are representing what you want people to see, and yeah, so that's something that's quite important. I think a lot of people think it's like partying and all this sort of stuff, and yeah, there's partying and there's like prosecco, etc. But you know, it's or you bring your own, but you know, it's it is a very, very important element. It's vital for marketing and PR people, but for the dev side as well. I think it's very important because you will meet publishers, you will meet people to help with your marketing. Everybody should be intermingling, you know, within reason, within comfortability, etc. Because there's a lot of benefits. For me personally, most of the best sort of business deals I've done, or the best things that have happened to me personally, was just going randomly to something and something random happening. So yeah, it's worth getting out there, and I would also not snub certain events. So most of the people will be like, well, there's Res, there's Eurogamer, there's Gamescom, there's blah, blah, blah. Look at all the events that's going. See what, like, you haven't been to, try it out. Look at reviews and look at, like, what people have been saying about it. But there's so much value in small, medium, and large tier events. I got one of my, like, I got a massive contract once for a company that I was working with because I randomly went to the opening of a gaming bar in Vienna, and then I met this coach of a massive esports company, and then we did this £2 million deal with it, and everyone was like, oh Claire, you're so savvy. No, I just wanted free drink. But take chances and know that when you go to these events and you think, Jesus, everyone here's a veteran, everyone's super confident, everyone's thinking the same thing. It's hard to go out and meet people, but usually, mostly, it's safe and it's you'll be grand, essentially. So hopefully that was more useful than my other. I'm so sorry. My other answer.
I mean, I would literally just echo that. Like Claire's already pretty much covered everything that needs to be said, but yeah, it is absolutely essential for networking. For me personally, when I was trying to make the transition from QA into production, I feel like one of the main reasons I was able to do that, and probably quite quickly, was because of the networking that I was doing. I was trying to go to events around Manchester, around Liverpool, to get to know people, go to as many sort of shows as I can and things like that, or what I could afford to travel to. Social media, as you were saying, was a big one. Twitter, just trying to engage with people, getting to know people, hopefully not be too annoying online. But yeah, I found it super, super useful to start to get to know contacts and to get to know people and to meet like-minded people that I would want to work with, who were doing cool things, cool projects. And it was kind of really useful for me as a producer as well, because I should try and know a lot of people. I should try and know a lot of people with different experiences, different backgrounds, different skill sets that I can hopefully apply to some of the games that I'm working on. So it can be daunting. It can be totally daunting. When I first started, one of my directors said to me, oh, the games industry is just so small, you'll just get to know everyone in like a year. And I was like, no, I will not be doing that. There was some truth to it. You do get to see, hopefully colleagues and friends as you go on and at the same events and things like that. But yeah, the only thing I'll say is try and not stick to your friend group as you go on. It can, once you get to a certain point where you feel pretty comfortable and you feel like you not that you know everyone you need to talk to, but you're kind of sort of complacent in where you are. Try not to stick to your friend groups and keep being complacent. Keep trying to talk to people. Keep trying to like approach the group that you've never met before in whatever conference you're at. So maybe if there was someone that you wanted to talk to today, or just go for it. Just go and say hello. And I did that a little bit yesterday, and met some brilliant people. It was really great. And things that I'm going to follow up on after the conference. So yeah, try not to get too complacent with your friends, and maybe just try and go out and speak to one or two new people if you find it a little bit daunting. But it gets easier. Everyone's just here to get to know each other, so there's no, like, don't talk to me or anything like that. There's nothing like that. Everyone's very encouraging. Everyone wants to help each other, get to know people. But yeah, just you just got to do it, unfortunately.
Wow, okay.
No! It's okay, I like your trainers.
And sorry that you didn't get a chance, but maybe afterwards, please come up and speak to our lovely panel. I'd just like to say a huge thank you. That was really incredibly valuable, and we didn't get to... And I guess I'll pass on to yourselves, and we can all chat further over a bite of lunch. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ladies. That was an absolutely spectacular panel. So we're just going to give everybody